So we are going to start our class today with quick review on what we learned last week on mouthpiece of truth and justice. Very quick review on topic number 10. How do I work and respond to God as I'm called to work? So that was the fifth M, mouthpiece of truth and justice. So we talked about character, curiosity, and culture quotient. 3 aspects of CQ. How to thrive in a diverse workplace, whether in America or everywhere else around the country. The world is getting very diverse, which is great. That's how God has created us in his image, whether it's red, yellow, black, or white. We are together, one human race, all God's children. And when we are diverse, different personality, different culture, different background, we could easily run into conflict. And we learned that conflict isn't all bad. Many conflicts are actually healthy conflict that help us to get to know each other better if we handle it right. And we can come up with even better solution than what we can do on our own. And then remember the 3 R, that we want to take advantage of the conflict to resolve them. So we build relationship, build better results, and put our real Christian faith in action. So we finished 7 of the 8 Qs in our leadership quotient. We focused on CQ, and today we'll finish the last Q, which is HQ later. So we talked about how to thrive in a diverse workplace. I looked at some companies, including my own company, and how it really demonstrated good value in diversity and inclusion. We compared a different culture, the Western and the Eastern culture. And then within the Eastern culture, where we have the East culture and the South Asian culture being different, how we can learn from each other. And ultimately, we want to embrace diversity because it really offers many benefits, because we can solve problems better when we are diverse. So this is the acrostic for Thrive, THRIVE, to thrive, not just to survive in a diverse environment. And I've experienced this in my 33 years of working, not to be boxed in by certain stereotype that people may think about you. We need to be assertive and stand firm and be confident and be humble and constructive, even when we disagree. How to renew our courage and curiosity to speak up with character and integrity, and be a victor instead of a victim, and be a good example in our attitude and words, in our actions. So this is when we compare, when we thrive in the positive, to stand firm, with negative on the right, that we got fixated in a stereotype and feel like we are a victim, and we would run away from conflict and not able to resolve it and be a true peacemaker. And ultimately, we want to be a good servant leader. That's our theme. We want to be a servant leader of integrity. And we can list these top 10 benefits of what diversity can bring to the workplace: innovation, solutions that we couldn't do on our own, and we can serve our customer better and retain talents better. And then to embrace diversity for the good. These are the very practical ways to embrace diversity. Not just think about ourselves, but also helping other diverse groups who are less fortunate, perhaps in African Americans and Hispanic, that we can go alongside them and mentor them, encourage them, and encourage each other to build a better communication and confidence and conflict resolution skills. So conflicts are bound to happen. When they're human beings, there will be problems. That's very expected. The most important is how you look at those conflicts in a positive way. And we learned many techniques last time, and all grounded with the love, as First Corinthians chapter 13 reminded us, that through love, we're able to handle these conflicts. And then Romans chapter 12 helped me a whole lot throughout my career and even now, that how to put love in action. especially in very difficult times, especially when people persecute you, when you are going through affliction, how we can still be joyful and be faithful in our prayer and not to be conceited. So that really helped to build my emotional quotient. And then the second part of Romans chapter 12, verse 17 to 21, remind us not to pay evil with evil, because God is on our side. He would fight for us. And I've experienced and saw God working in action. And ultimately, we can overcome evil with good and want to be a real peacemaker. So these are the 10 areas and 10 sets of different techniques and strategy, how to resolve conflict. And there are a couple of talks on my Call to Work website that you can go listen. And we picked a few of them to go through last time. And I'll just do a quick recap on 3 of the more practical ones. First one, 5 counter approaches. We learn to be curious before we are critical about how people may not agree with us. We learn to show caring instead of crushing them, even though we have different points of view. We must connect before we correct them. Ask instead of assuming that they are wrong, and tell me more. Ask people to tell us more. People like to talk and find out what happened next. We can use these 5 counter approach at work and also at home, especially with our family during COVID-19 when we perhaps more very stressed. So remember to practice these 5 counter approach. The second one can pause before you resolve the conflict. So the pause is P-A-U-S-E, to prepare and pray before you go. Think through all the strategy and the things that we learned last week, how you can plan and prepare how to address this conflict. Be affirmative, positive in your relationship and in your words, how you communicate. So that's where the communication skill come in. And understand where they're coming from. What is their interest? What is the benefit that they can gain? We can help them and convince them. And how is it the benefit for the whole group collectively together? And search for creative solution. Think out of the box. Solution that I couldn't come up with by myself or by themselves, but together, 1 + 1 is greater than 3. We can have a bigger piece of pie that we can come up with win, win, win all around. And that takes time, it takes effort. E is to evaluate all the options so that they have a sense of ownership as much as I own them as well. And finally, the third practical way to address conflict is one should work on praise, right? How to, with praise. So it's a very simple 5-step. First, what's positive that we both agree on? Start with the common ground, always good with positive. Then, reverse. Okay, what do we disagree on? List them out and then aggregate. What are some ways to come up with win-win solution? And then yield to the options and ways, not just my way or their way, but our way. How can we work it out together to get to a solution that would be beneficial and motivate us to work on it together? So those are the recap from last time. So again, we're excited to finish our 13-week series. Today is week 12 for Call to Work. Thank you for joining us. And today we focus on topic 11, Messenger of the Gospel. Messenger of the Gospel. So it's actually the 6th and the final of the 6M on how we respond to God as He has called us to work. And this is how we want to pray through these 6M. So we've learned already, model godly character, make good work, minister grace and love, mold culture, mouthpiece for truth and justice. Today, we're going to learn about messenger of the gospel. Wow, if you do all the other 5M well, we now earn the right to share the gospel when we are asked and when we have the opportunity. And then for the long list of 8 Qs, the 8 leadership quotients, we finished all 7, and today's the final one, humility quotient, HQ. Of course, it's not headquarters, right? So it takes humility for us to be self-aware, for us to have the courage to apologize. We'll cover that today as well. And for us to share the testimony with others when the time is right. And remind us, right, our definition of leadership is to have the ability to influence others, to be their best. So it's others-centered, helping others to be successful for the greater good, not just their good or my good, but for the collective greater good, aligned to a shared vision. So that's a vision that we can all stand behind and have energy and motivation behind. So with the context of that leadership definition and going into the final leadership quotient, HQ, we want to think about what does it mean to us to be to have humility. We need to be self-aware, know our own strength and weakness. We already talked quite a bit about SWOT in the past, and know our limitation. Know when we are wrong and know to be willing to apologize. And that's why we're going to go into the 7 A's of apology in a very sincere way so that we're a true peacemaker. When we're humble, we also learn to be others aware, to learn more about others and listen, and active listening. And then finally, we'll prepare ourselves to walk the talk and share the gospel. How do we share the gospel in the workplace? Remember from Colossians 3:23, that's a very famous verse that we always quote when we think about God has called us to work. And work, it's a blessing. It's not a curse. Because whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord. Because God is our CEO, remember? Not just for human masters. So the hearts, when I came up with an acrostic for the hearts, in there talks quite a bit about what we are talking in this lesson today. First, humility. Sometimes we feel that, oh, I'm not a very good Christian. Sometimes I lose my temper. I don't have good testimony. Maybe I should just be a secret agent. I should just be a 007 James Bond. It worked. So people wouldn't know that I'm a Christian, because I don't want to shame the name of Jesus when I don't have good testimony and good example. Do you think that's better to be a secret agent and hide your faith? Or better to say, okay, yes, I'm a Christian. Oh, I made a mistake. I was wrong. I didn't do this correctly. And have the courage and the humility to apologize. And from my 30-some years of experience at work, and even now in my retirement or refinement, when you are humble, when you apologize, when you acknowledge your own limitation, people are a lot more willing to work with you than when you are not humble. Because you're humble and you apologize, and when people know that you're Christian, people know how you're different from others. And then you build on your emotional quotient that we talked about before, how to minister with grace and truth to others and with love, right? So you show your enthusiasm and being positive, and you're available to help others, right? Remember, leadership is to help others to be their best, help them to be successful, and we'll be successful together. And remember to use our strength, right? Reflect on our strength and have a teachable heart, always do our best and know that God will help us to do the rest. And S is share with others the gospel and pray for them. So that's our theme today, how to be humble and how to share the gospel. When we build our humility quotients, it depends a lot on how well we communicate. As we heard from Jackie's sharing earlier, how we want to change the information into action. So these are the 5 levels of communication. So the very basic level is just cliche. Oh, how are you? Oh, the weather's nice today. Did you have your lunch? Very basic casual talks. Or then facts, exchanging basic facts. Oh, today's kind of cold. Oh, today we have a lot of work to do and long meetings, such simple facts. Or opinions, right? And say, oh, I feel that the meeting was a little bit intense, or the atmosphere wasn't as pleasant as I would like. And then the 4th level is feelings. I feel a little bit stressed from that meeting. And then the complete openness and say, oh, you know, John was really difficult on me, and being honest to share how you feel and being open. So those are the 5 levels. So when we build our humility quotient, if we're willing to build and mature our levels of communication from level 1, hallway talk, to reporter talk, to intellectual talk, and then the heart connection, not just the intellectual head connection, but heart connection, emotional talk. And finally, the genuine truth talk. That really helped to build your humility quotient. And in the same way, when you translate into information to understanding it, and then what does it mean? What's the implication? And helping people to make commitment and eventually changing their behavior. That's what we want to do, right? When we build our humility quotient, be self-aware and others aware. We want to communicate effectively. That it's not just a head knowledge, but really a heart feeling connection, right? So we can talk about what this means and give them the information and turn into a knowledge. And then hopefully we learn to listen as well, because it's a 2-way communication. We learn a lot about active listening. And God gave us 2 ears for a reason, right? So we need to listen at least twice as much. And then have an understanding with each other. Then we involve each other and build relationship. When you're a good leader and good humility quotient, you need to engage people. In fact, in companies, we always talk about, what is the people engagement level? So the engagement of people's involvement in projects, in company activities and decision-making and getting them empowered. It's very powerful to get them involved because of good relationship. And then eventually we can help them to change and take action. And that's when we have information changing to action with good results. So that's how we can take advantage of our humility quotient, be more self-aware, effective, mature communication levels. So now with humility quotient, we'll have the courage to apologize when we're wrong. So this is a full-fledged, complete way of apologizing and be a true peacemaker, right? Remember, we don't want to be a peace figure, just avoid the conflict and run away and just pretend there's peace, or peace breaker when we fight and try to win our way and be win-lose. We want to be a real peacemaker to really let the blessing flow from one direction to other people's direction. A lot of art, how to apologize. Not just say, I'm sorry, but, I'm sorry, you're so sensitive. I'm sorry, you think I did something wrong. I'm sorry, you think you hate what I do. When you say that you're sorry, I'm sorry you made me do that. One of our children did that quite a bit when they were young. So we pray not to do that, not just to be superficial in apologizing. So these are the 7 A. First, address everyone involved. When you're sincere to apologize, if there are other people involved, we need to tell them we should let everyone involved be in the conversation. How to make sure everyone agree on what is right and what is wrong and apologize. And then second A is to avoid saying all these conditional phrases, if, but, maybe. Be careful to listen to yourself, right? HQ is self-aware. How not to say, if you didn't do that, I wouldn't do this. I'm sorry, but so all that would turn it to be negative, right? And then the third A is admit specifically, very detailed. What is it that you apologize on? Don't just generalize. I'm sorry that I lost my temper. I would often say that to my children. And I would say, would you forgive mommy? And then when they were young, there were times they say, not yet. Then I would have thick skin. I would go back and ask again. And of course, eventually they say yes, and we'll be hugging each other. And hopefully they won't say no, right? So be very specific on what you apologize. So just the same way when we praise people, we want to be very specific and give them a character word, right? Remember we talked about the communication, A, B, C, D, E skills that work. And the fourth A is to accept the consequence. When we did something wrong and apologize, while people may forgive us, we still need to acknowledge there's a consequence to every action and be willing to accept the consequence. Even when people forgive us, we still need to accept the consequence. And then number 5 is to alter our behavior. When you apologize, so I said, I lost my temper, I apologize, then I should learn to manage my emotion better and be more cool so that I don't lose my temper again. So I need to make a change and ask for forgiveness. And remember, when we ask for forgiveness, it's a good thing because that really helps us to learn to forgive others. Because when we forgive others, we actually benefit the most. We are more relieved when we forgive others and not to hold a grudge. When we ask for others' forgiveness, it's their decision if they will forgive us or not. Even if they don't forgive us, we at least have made the effort. So it's their responsibility if they forgive us or not, because it takes 2 to dance, takes 2 to tango, and takes 2 to reconcile. So we can ask. Most important is we learn to forgive others and then pray that they will forgive us. And the final A is allow time. It's not overnight, it takes time. And there oftentimes may take a few times of apologizing and asking for forgiveness. And I know that has happened. And there's sometimes maybe verbal, sometimes writing an email or writing a letter or writing a card and allow time. So this is a very good definition of 7A of apology by Peacemaker Ministry. And what is the cost and the benefit of apologizing? Can you imagine if we don't apologize? Why is that? We tend to overestimate the cost and the difficulties of making apologies. We think it's very difficult. I learned how to apologize for my husband. From our 34 years of marriage, in the early days, a lot of times, even when I'm wrong, my husband will apologize and I feel bad. And I learned how to apologize like he did. Then it's actually not that hard. And once you start and when you have the courage to apologize to certain people that you may not feel comfortable, then you have more confidence and comfort level over time. So don't overestimate the cost and the difficulty. And also, don't underestimate the consequence of not making apology. And in fact, there are many more benefits when you apologize than not apologizing. So there are many more benefits than the cost. Because when you apologize with your humility quotient, you can be trusted better. You can build respectful relationship. You have deeper relationship and interaction. You can rebuild and heal that relationship, restore and reconcile. And all these are good things. I know it's easier said than done. And yet we're saying it's worth it. And it helps to remove the barrier and any stumbling stone. So I encourage us to pray and ask God and think, who is it that's important for you to apologize, whether at work or at home? And finally, when you apologize, you wouldn't have any regret. And don't procrastinate. We'll talk about time management next time in the last lesson, right? Apology is something you don't want to procrastinate because relationships matter more than having to be right, especially in a family relationship, especially with our children or spouse, right? Even if you're right, you don't need to win. It's the relationship that matters more. So like I mentioned, some people write down the apology in advance before and they practice, or they might send it in email or in a letter. Don't delay it and don't feel like you have to regret it and say, oh, wish I would have, could have, or should have, right? Because these are all regrets. You say, oh, I wish I could refresh the love sooner or review the apology sooner. redeem the mistake sooner, or restore the relationship sooner, or renew the grace sooner. All these are so compelling. So pray for us not to delay. And there may be someone here today who need this message to take the courage and have the humility quotient to apologize. Finally, how we can take our HQ to be a messenger of the gospel, that we can walk the talk. After we do all the other 5M, we have the good Christ-like character in the workplace. And we earn the right and the relationship with people that they are willing. And they may even come and ask you, why, Joyce, Jackie, why are you different? Michelle, why are you able to handle all these pressure cooker challenges at work when they are wrong against you and you're still able to stay positive and professional? Like a story I told you, for the whole year, I cried every Sunday night and couldn't say thank God it's Monday when I went to work, because I was given a very hard time. And how I went through the whole year really drew attention from others. And people asked, how did you do that, Elaine? And that's an opportunity to share the gospel. And I had many opportunities to share the gospel. So today's topic really is one of my passion, other than teaching, mentoring, and helping others, is to share the gospel. I had many good memories of sharing the gospel. When I first became a Christian at age 16, I remember the first person I shared the gospel with was just a few days after I became a Christian, and also a few days after this person arrived from China to Maryland. And I shared the gospel with her and she accepted Christ. And guess what? She's now in Sacramento and she's been sharing the gospel with people, relatives and friends in China, in US, just like a sponge. She absorbed what she learned and shared with others. So it's one of the many stories I can share, how I have the opportunity to share the gospel. So 1 Peter 3:15 reminds us, when you do those 5M, and model Christ and minister grace and love at the workplace and make good work and be the mouthpiece of truth and justice and mold the office culture, people see you being different. And people have come and asked me, why are you different? And this is when you always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope. And the very important part, do it with gentleness and respect. We're going to dive more in detail. What does it mean to be gentle and respect when we share the gospel? So remember the 8 Qs, the Beatitude Quotient that I shared with you for Leadership Quotient. And this is the VP who wrote this Elaine Kung acrostic for me and how they all match to these 8 Qs. And this VP is among the many co-workers who asked me about my Christian faith. So one time, again, it's God's pleasant surprise, right? The 5 P blessings, God's presence, power, promises, provisions, and pleasant surprises. So one day I was rushing to leave the office to go to Bible study fellowship. And I had to go to a train station, take a train, and then go to a car, park at a parking lot, and then drive to the Bible study location. So it so happened that day, out of the blue, for some other reason, I went to a particular train station that I'd never parked at. And it turns out this train station is very close to this VP's home. And we were rushing to leave the office. We were at the elevator at the same time. So there are many pleasant surprises. And then he said, oh, you're going to that train station. I'll give you a ride. So when I was riding on his fancy Porsche car, my first time and probably the last time I've been on a Porsche fancy car, in that 15-minute car ride, he had some very good conversation and asked me some questions. And one of them was, Elaine, what is your turning point? Because he knew about my past, my poor family background. And he saw how I'm strong. And as you can see, how he described my personal brand, on my personality, how I grew through adversity. So he asked me, what's your turning point? Wow. So he asked me, what do I tell him? I told him my turning point is when I became a Christian. And I'll tell you what I told him later on, because I have the whole story to share with you. So how do we go about sharing the gospel in general, right? So we can always learn from Jesus. His way is the best way. Example, very famous example, John chapter 4. Jesus talks with the Samaritan woman, remember? The Samaritan woman who had 5 husbands. And she had to come at noontime, the heat of day, to get water to avoid gossip and people pointing at her and talking and criticizing her. And Jesus was very intentional, very deliberate to go through Samaria. Usually the Jews do not go through Samaria. So Jesus did that on purpose because he knew he's going to run into this Samaritan woman. So I summarized the way Jesus shared the good news with the Samaritan woman as LOVE, love. Again, it's about our relationship with people, and we need to extend God's love, right? So L is to live out the 6M. If we truly practice our spiritual discipline, our Christian character at work, and live out the 6M, we earn the right and build positive relationship. People either ask us, or you can care about how people may have needs and struggles and pray for them. So there are opportunity to open the door. We'll go through some more techniques later, right? Always to observe. Turn on your antenna, right? And watch and be others aware, right? HQ is self-aware and others aware. Meet people where they are. There's so many times at work. I know coworkers having marriage problems, or they had a car accident, or they're about to lose their job. Many challenges that they are going through, we can ask God for wisdom to observe and see their need and meet them where they are. Also, V is the various ways. Find creative ways to build relationship and bond with each other, to build positive relationship, because it's all about relationship. Just like how our relationship with God is trusting God and build intimate relationship with Christ, right? It's not about a religion. I always tell people, I don't need a religion, because religion is like a crusade. You would go and kind of in the name of religion, and you may even do the wrong thing and kill people. If you have a true relationship with God, you would choose to do the right thing. And finally, E is to encourage conversation and share your testimony. So I'm going to share my testimony. I've done it. It could be an hour if I'm invited to give a gospel message. I've done it in 3 minutes. So I'll do a 3-minute version for you today. And I encourage all of us to have our story ready to talk about how you were before you became a Christian, just like the SOAR story, SOAR. What's the situation? What's the obstacle? How it was before? And then what was the process that you took to become a Christian? And then what is the result, right? SOAR. What action did you take and what's the result after? Very simple phrases, could even be 1 minute, right? Remember, the source statement can be 1 minute. So I'm going to use a 3 or 4 minute version to share with you my testimony, and I encourage you to do similar. I love to study science. So I was an engineer, and I always think that everything needs to be proven, right? Math, when you prove the equation, QED, yes, you can prove it. And I thought science should always be proved. And then I realized all these famous scientists, Newton, Galileo, Pasteur, Faraday, all these famous scientists, including my professor, Dan Tsui at Princeton, and he won a Nobel Prize in physics. All these are famous scientists, and yet I realized there's one thing in common. They're all Christians. And I say, wow, if these famous scientists believe in God and they're Christian, believe in Jesus, I need to think about what that means. If they are so smart and believe in their God that probably created this universe. And the way they study science seem to be studying and discovering God's power of creation. Wow, then I realized science and Christian faith do not conflict. And then this very famous scientist, Pascal, he's actually a scientist, a physicist. He's very famous in pressure and vacuum. In fact, our unit for pressure, Pascal, is named after him. And then you also may know, for those of us old like me, know the Pascal computer programming language named after him. And he's a mathematician. He's also a philosopher. You've probably heard about the Pascal wage theory. And guess what? He's also a theologian. So because of the many talent that he had, and he said this one sentence really changed me and got me to think. He said, there's a vacuum in everyone's heart. And the vacuum cannot be filled by fame, power, position, or possession. Because it's in the shape of God, and only God can fill. That really got me to think. And I know I felt empty when I am in the midst of friends, and sometimes I feel lonely, right? There's a new phrase, and we just gave a talk on social media and saying we're lonely together, right? There's a group of people doing their own social media, but they're lonely, even they're together. So I know I want to believe in Jesus. And then I realized my name, Elaine, I picked from the dictionary when I was in Hong Kong. And I was not a Christian. Turns out God has such a good sense of humor and pleasant surprise. Elaine means light. And Matthew 5:16 became one of my life verses, that I want to let the light shine before others with good testimony, good deeds, to give glory to God in heaven. So because of that, and because of how I felt when I was in Hong Kong, like a frog inside a well, that all I saw was darkness, very little space and very limited scope. I was a troublemaker, because you know how Hong Kong is very crowded. And I was also a troublemaker with very bad temper. And I struggle. I'm not sure what faith means. Now that I went through the scientists, I learned from them. I say, oh, faith. Faith is like when you're sitting on a chair and have confidence in the faith, in the chair that is not going to fall apart. Faith is when you get onto a plane and you trust the pilot to land the plane safely. Faith is when you can eat a meal in a restaurant, not to worry that you get poisoned. Faith is when you are swimming and you felt about to drown and there's a hand extending to save you. Got it. So faith is to trust in everyday life. So then I learned to trust in Jesus, and it came up with this A-B-C. Acknowledge my wrongdoings. I was a troublemaker. I was so mean. I bit my sister, my older sister. I was very selfish, me, myself, and I did not meet God's standard. B is to believe that God loves me, created me for a purpose. And C is to call on Jesus and believe that he's the Son of God, came, loved others, healed, did many miracles, and taught many people, and then died on the cross for me, for my wrongdoing. And then he rose again in 3 days. And because of believing in Jesus, my life was transformed. And my emptiness was filled, and now I have purpose in my life. And whether in valley or mountaintop, I can trust in God to help me. Instead of feeling guilty, I have God's amazing grace and show gratitude for his salvation. So this is a kind of a 5-minute version of my story. And of course, you can make it more of a story. You can shorten it, you can lengthen it. I have a whole hour version of it. So I encourage you to think about how you were before becoming a Christian and what's your process and question you asked to become a Christian. And then what is your action that you took, and then the result. And afterwards, how did you change? So I want to share some practical ways that you can share your faith and be respectful and having that faith discussion at work. So this is from Sue Wan. For those of you who came to our work as global local Mission Conference. She was one of the speakers on November 7th. And this is her website. Go check it out. She talked about wow, where she said, it's to open, to widen, and leave the door open, like the owl, having so much wisdom. How you open the conversation when you tell people, you out yourself saying that you're a Christian. And you widen the conversation, the door, by asking some questions and be fascinated to listen to their story and not just be fascinating and telling your own story. Try to listen. And then you widen the conversation door by watering it. And then at some point pivot to Jesus and ask if they may want to pray. And then you leave the door open, making yourself available. So that's kind of the owl that she shared with us. So I made a 7P and go into more detail for you to think about how to have respectful Christian faith conversations at work. And I had these experience quite a bit at work. Not necessarily holding a Bible in front of people, really talking through your story and listening. So the first P is to prepare, to share in casual conversation, right? So you don't want to be a secret agent and hide your faith. So, how was your weekend? You say, I had a pretty busy weekend. Our church had a picnic and I had to cook and prepare, but we had a good time. So just casual mention of your Christian activities. Don't just wear your faith in your sleeve and say, I'm a Christian, I don't drink, accuse people. You don't want to be judgmental like that, but just be casual. It's part of your life. I've always, think wearing a cross is helpful as well. And just how you make decisions. And people know, for example, my husband does not drink. And he always would travel on business trip. And of course, coworkers and customers will be drinking. And yet over time, people know that he does not drink. And people respect that. And that's his Christian value. And then many times there are coworkers who may curse. And they get upset and stressed from work. They may curse. And yet, as they know about your Christian value, and they know how you practice your Christian faith, they actually do not curse in front of us. So that, without judging people, so when you are sincere and practice your 6M and casually mention so that people know, yeah, you're a Christian. And you remember last time when I shared about the diversity topic, and all these mentors and senior leaders, most of them already know that I'm a Christian as well. And remember, when I make a mistake, I learn to apologize. So I'm not perfect. It's okay. So the second P is to plan thoughtful questions to ask. When I share my story, I will say, how is your family background? What is your faith experience like? When you have the wisdom and the courage at the right time, you can ask some thoughtful question. Then show personal interest in them. Be fascinated about what they tell you. Tell me more and be curious, right? Remember the CQ, not just keep telling your own story. So listen, active listen, very powerful. Not just the head connection, but also the heart. And then planting process, like building the relationship like a plant, right? With the seed, and then you water it. And how to water the conversation by good active listener. Ask good questions to a point where you may pivot toward Jesus' direction. May pivot toward Jesus without naming Jesus, helping them feel the love of Jesus through your words and your action. Help them listen to the voice of Jesus through how you care about them, how you ask questions and show curiosity, and how you can show them and let them see the love of Christ and the beauty of Christ in you through the way you respect them. And we'll talk more in detail what respect means. And then the 6P is to pray. Of course, go in there with a prayerful heart. And also, if there's the right time, and offer to pray for them. In all my times, offering to pray for people at the right time, no one would ever say, no, don't pray for me, right? Everyone would always welcome the opportunity to be blessed, to pray and ask for their needs and meet them where they are. Pray for them. Sometimes they may be willing to pray with you. So sometimes you may pray, say, oh, I'll pray for you. Or sometimes if they give you permission and let you pray aloud with them. So I've done both cases. And there are times if the person is a Christian, then they may pray with you together as well. Of course, we want to choose the right time, not in the middle of a meeting, would be lunchtime or after work. And finally, the 7P is to propose to chat later, to meet later and make yourself available. So these are the 7P to help us think through how to practice the love and respect when we share the Christian faith. So I have 2 acrostics to show the respect, how to show gentleness and respect when you share the gospel. Always to recognize that everyone is different. So including different religion. There are Buddhist, Hindu, there's Islamic, Jehovah's Witness. I do say that we would avoid talking to Jehovah's Witness because they tend to be very strong mind and they're very fervent. Same thing for Mormons. So I would be very careful and avoid those conversations. Just continue to show them love. So know that everyone is different. Empathy. We always talk about empathy, active listening, right? Remember to connect before we correct. So don't get into an argument about Christianity versus other religion. It's more about relationship, remember? And it's about caring about them. And of course, ultimately, we want to share the gospel like I did earlier. And then ultimately, it's the 3 things that we want to honor. Number 1, there's one God with Trinity, the Holy Father, Holy Son, and the Holy Spirit. Second, the Bible is inspired by God. And third, Jesus is the Son of God. So with these 3 basic truths, and that's when we want to go through the ABC and help people to believe in Jesus. There could be many other different minor things that's not important, but these 3 are important. So listen and connect, and then self-monitor. Listen to yourself, self-aware, and think first before you speak, right? And then give people some space, personal space, give them room, especially with people who may not be familiar with Christianity. And then earn the trust. Remember the 6 M, right? So we live through every one of those M to earn the trust so that you earn the right to share with them because of your words, your attitude, and your actions. And then you can cheer them on to help them to feel they're making progress and earn the respect. And finally, treat everyone as equal. Just like we said in the Constitution, right? Everyone is created equal because God created us equal. And then the second acrostic for respect is some practical reminder how to show respect, especially sometimes when we may be in some tense discussion, is to remain calm, to encourage and let others speak up, stay positive, be polite, embrace differences, even when we have different religion, different background, different points of view, and consider the consequences so that we don't lose our cool. And then think before you speak. So those are smart, practical ways to show our respect. So finally, as we finish this topic on humility quotient, share the gospel, again, to remind us, it's not just a head knowledge. I pray that your heart is convicted and encouraged. Yes, you feel excited to share the gospel with others and then really put into practice time and time again and make it into a habit so you can walk and make forward and make progress. So Jackie also showed this learning pyramid. I really encourage us not just to learn 5%. I pray that we go all the way to 90% by sharing with others, doing your class actions from the email that I send you and put it into walking the talk. And pray for the people that you can share the gospel with. And God will put them near you. And then continue your one-on-one peer partner so that you don't just get into the vicious cycle and get into a virtuous cycle and encourage one another. So just some reminder on our resources. On our website, we have all the training and other podcasts and training videos, calltowork.org, and my WeChat and Facebook. And then this is the Call to Work WeChat group, online group. Welcome you to join us. And we have regular sharing of resources and other speakers, other talks on faith and work and family. So this is the Encourage tab, where more of those conflict resolution and communication techniques are posted. And then we have all the YouTubes from Brother Wu, Tree of Life, created for us. And then one more time to share with you, Michelle sent you email. And she'll do one more time next week to remind you and invite you to accept this Right Now Media offer. Call to Work has paid for it. It's a free resource, no strings attached. Once you get in, you can get a wealth of very powerful practical video teaching by world-class speakers like Francis Chan, Rick Warren. So I encourage you to go check it out. Look for that email. Go find it in your spam box. So next weekend, we have no class because of Thanksgiving in the United States. So my daughter came from New York. We're very excited. She's being quarantined and she brought her dog. We're going to spend some good time together. So no class next weekend. So the final class, 13th class, is on December 5th or December 4th weekend. And the final topic is 7 MI added, which is managing your time, your life, and how do you wear all these hats for your faith, family, and your firm, meaning your career. So remember the new time? By now we should all know. It's 1 hour earlier in America.
欢迎订阅生命树媒体频道。